Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The UK economy slowed more than expected at the start of this year, with consumers tightening their belts in the face of rising inflation. Figures from the Office of National Statistics show growth slowing because of falling retail sales and a jump in living costs. The economy expanded by 0.3% from January to March. That's down from growth of 0.7% at the end of last year. Our economics correspondent Andy Verity has the details.
This sector is now the bright spot of our economy. This Shrewsbury-based manufacturer makes internal parts for cars from Land Rovers to the Nissan Qashqai. The drop in the value of the pound before and after the Brexit vote should have helped business a lot, because it's cheaper for foreign buyers paying dollars or euros to buy the cars that these parts go into. But even here, new orders aren't growing as quickly as they did a year ago.
There's potential customers with orders who are saying, look, let's just wait for 12 months to see what happens with Brexit, see what happens with tariffs, see whether we can buy from the UK or buy from Europe. And what we're saying is, look, we will continue to invest, we will continue to grow. What we need is a bit more commitment from the government to get the deal done.
This company's customers, the car makers, could be investing more to meet demand. But their ultimate customers are consumers. And in this country at least, consumer spending is slowing down.
What is a matter of concern for businesses is that if the consumer starts to give way because of pressures from inflation on consumers' ability to spend more in the high street, then that could hold back business investment, and that could be the beginning of a broader slowdown.
That message wasn't lost on the politicians on the campaign trail, who each had their own take on how serious the slowdown was.
Britain's economy is forecast to grow at 2% this year. Employment is at record highs and it's set to go higher still. The British economy is resilient.
The figures are ominous, and they do suggest that the way the British economy has been kept afloat since the Brexit vote, with a lot of consumer spending supported by credit, high house prices, that this is not really sustainable.
For years, consumer spending has been the motor of economic growth, but now we're hitting the brakes. Interest rates are as low as they've ever been and consumers are borrowing more. But a fundamental problem has returned to haunt us. Prices, once again, are going up faster than wages. A key measure of whether we're getting better off is the value of the economy per person, also known as GDP per head. That dropped after the financial crisis and only recently got back above its 2008 level. In the first 3 months of this year, it grew by just 0.1%. To political opponents in the election campaign, that's significant.
I mean, I think the GDP figures should be setting alarm bells ringing, and it underlines the importance of making sure that there are voices there arguing for a common sense outcome.
No, it's shocking because it comes on top of the figures around inflation going up and earnings stagnating. I think it's really worrying for the average household in our country now. It does show you, though, why Theresa May has gone for this early election, because the economy is now on the turn.
If you're an optimist, the shift from consumer spending to manufacturing is welcome, a rebalancing the previous government tried but failed to achieve. But that won't be much comfort to households whose real incomes, once again, are shrinking. Andy Verity, BBC News, Shrewsbury.
The UK economy has grown far slower than expected in the first 3 months of the year as inflation begins to bite. Consumer spending has dropped, hitting shops and service industries like restaurants and hotels, a sign, say experts, of the squeeze on incomes since the post-Brexit slump in the pound. Here's our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy.
Fast fashion in the making. It's not often that manufacturing comes to the rescue of the British economy, yet factories like this one, supplying firms like ASOS and Marks & Spencer, have been chugging along very nicely.
These garments here are all going into ASOS.
Jenny Holloway says she was nervous immediately after the Brexit vote, but sales are up 22% and her order book is full.
We're not finding that we've had a reduction, quite the opposite. We're the busiest we've ever been and our order books are full. But they're different. Whereas before we maybe have been making 2,000 of a garment, we're making smaller quantities, 500, 800.
She's also benefiting as customers like ASOS and others take advantage of the weak pound and make more of their clothing in the UK rather than Europe.
I don't think we're going to be affected the way that people are believing to be with consumer confidence. What we're finding is that they still want to buy garments, but they're changing their habits. They want something new. They're not prepared to wait.
She may seem unruffled, but the data lays bare the reality. The economy grew by 0.7% at the end of last year, but today growth has slumped to just 0.3%, worse than expected. The fall was driven by a contraction in Britain's services sector, the shops, restaurants and hotels that make up 3/4 of our economy, where growth shrank from 0.8% to just 0.3%. The Chancellor, though, preferred to stress the upside today.
Britain's economy is forecast to grow at 2% this year. Employment is at record highs and it's set to go higher still. The British economy is resilient.
Since the referendum, it's been Britain's consumers who've kept the economy going. But with inflation rising, there have been growing fears that that spending could begin to slow. Well, today, those fears became a reality. The problem is the first 3 months of the year were supposed to be the high point for growth. But now, with inflation showing no signs of easing off, the worry is it could all be downhill from here. Diane World measures footfall on the high street and says the evidence is already clear.
Well, we're seeing a decline in footfall during retail trading hours, and that's been slowing for a few months now.
What do you think is going to happen for the rest of the year?
Well, I mean, inflation is forecast to increase, and if it continues to rise, that will impact on household budgets further. And wage inflation is not keeping up with inflationary pressures, so people are feeling poorer and they'll continue to feel poorer. And as they do that, they'll spend less. The real crux will come when their confidence with regard to employment gets hit.
It's that worry about the future that's nagging Jenny Holloway. She's delaying the purchase of a new cutting machine because, with so much uncertainty, she's too nervous to write the cheque now. More delayed spending that could compound Britain's economic slowdown.
Here, consumer confidence appears to have fallen sharply and is being blamed for a big fall in spending. That helped slow economic growth to its lowest rate for 4 years. Many people are putting off buying big-ticket items like cars and fridges and staying in more instead of going out and socialising.
A significant slowdown in economic growth, a drop from 0.7% at the end of last year to 0.3% in the first part of this, much steeper than expected. Its consequences playing out in homes across the country.
Hi. Good to meet you. Good to meet you.
The Isaacs live in Sussex with their 2 children. They are concerned not only about the present, but also about what lies ahead.
We have noticed that for larger ticket items, cars, holidays, work to the house, we are thinking twice about that and being more cautious in what we're spending.
Brexit is on the mind because we don't know what's happening, and therefore you've got to take into consideration that if there's a larger investment or a capital spend, you probably wouldn't make it now.
So what's behind the slump in growth? One of the main reasons is a slowing of the until now booming services sector because of a fall in spending at hotels, restaurants and on the high street. The managing director of Visa closely tracks our shopping. His assessment is gloomy.
This is the lowest rate of consumer spending for 4 years. So in terms of what this says for the future and the remainder of the year, our outlook, most economists are quite cautious. Everybody's predicting there's going to be a further uptick in terms of inflation, and ultimately that will feed across into household budgets and hit people in their pockets.
But if the outlook is bleak on the high street, at the Treasury, a rosier picture is being painted.
Britain's economy is forecast to grow at 2% this year. Employment is at record highs and it's set to go higher still. The British economy is resilient.
This isn't a strong and stable economy. This is an unstable economy that is increasingly weak as a result of government policies.
Back in Crawley, it's time to pick the children up from school. They are sheltered from much of the financial pinch for now, but not entirely.
One of the obvious things for me would be that I'm more mindful of the small extravagances that I buy for the children. So now I don't buy them the trading cards that they might want, or the little plastic toy that they might ask for. So in that way, it's a little change that we've made that makes a difference.
Whoever is in power in 6 weeks' time, a slowing economy is a reality they will have to deal with. Narina Hertz, News at 10.